We're going to start with a dramatic reading this week. Tom, can you put on, I guess, like sort of masterpiece theater music? Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Okay. Well, we had all these children out planting trees, see, because we figured that was part of their education, to see how, the root systems, and also the sense of responsibility, taking care of things, being individually responsible. You know what I mean. And the trees all died. They were orange trees. I don't know why they died, they just died. Something wrong with the soil, possibly, or maybe the stuff we got from the nursery wasn't the best. We complained about it. So we got 30 kids there, each kid has his or own little tree to plant, and we've got these 30 dead trees. All these kids looking at these little brown sticks, it was depressing. And it wouldn't have been so bad, except that just a couple of weeks before the thing with the trees, the snakes all died. But I think that with the snakes, well, the reason that the snakes kicked it is because, you remember, the boiler was shut off for 4 days because of the strike, and that was explicable. It was something you could explain to the kids because of the strike. I mean, none of the parents would let them cross the picket lines, and they knew there was a strike going on and what it meant, so when things got started up again and we found the snakes, they weren't too disturbed. With the herb gardens, it was probably a case of overwatering, and at least now they know not to overwater. The children were very conscientious with the herb gardens, and some of them probably, slipped them a little extra water when we weren't looking. Or maybe, well, I don't like to think about sabotage, but it did occur to us. I mean, it was something that crossed our minds. We were thinking that way because before that, the gerbils had died, and the white mice had died, and the salamander. Well, now they know not to carry them around in the little plastic bags. Of course, we expected the tropical fish to die. There was no surprise. Those numbers, you look at them crooked and their belly up on the surface. But the lesson plan called for a tropical fish input at this point, and there was nothing we could do. It happens every year, you just have to hurry past it. We weren't even supposed to have a puppy. It was just a puppy the Murdoch girl found under the Gritsteed's truck one day, and she was afraid the truck would run over it when the driver had finished making his delivery, so she snuck it into her knapsack and brought it with her to school. So we had this puppy. As soon as I saw the puppy, I thought, oh Christ, I bet it will live for about 2 weeks, and then that's what it did. It wasn't supposed to be in the classroom at all. There's some kind of regulation about it, but you can't tell them they can't have a puppy when the puppy is already there, right in front of them, running around the floor and yapping. They named it Edgar. That is, they named it after me. They had a lot of fun running after it and yelling,
"Here, Edgar! Nice Edgar!"
Then they'd laugh like hell. They enjoyed the ambiguity. I enjoyed it myself. I don't mind being kidded. They made a little house for it in the supply closet and all that. I don't know what it died of. Distemper, I guess. It probably hadn't had any shots. I got it out of there before the kids got to school. I checked the supply closet each morning routinely because I knew what was going to happen. I gave it to the custodian. And then there was this Korean orphan that the class adopted through the Help the Children program. All the kids brought in a quarter a month. That was the idea. It was an unfortunate thing. The kid's name was Kim, and maybe we adopted him too late or something. The cause of death was not stated in the letter we got. They suggested we adopt another child instead and sent us some interesting case histories, but we didn't have the heart. The class took it pretty hard. They began, I think, nobody ever said anything to me directly, to feel that maybe there was something wrong with the school. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the school. Particularly, I've seen better and I've seen worse. It was just a run of bad luck. We had an extraordinary number of parents passing away, for instance. There were, I think, 2 heart attacks and 2 suicides, 1 drowning, and 4 killed together in a car accident, 1 stroke. And we had the usual heavy mortality rate among the grandparents. Maybe it was heavier this year. It seems so. And finally, the tragedy. The tragedy occurred when Matthew Wine and Tony Mavagordo were playing over where they're excavating for the new federal office building. There were all these big wooden beams stacked, at the edge of the excavation. There's a court case coming out of that, and parents are claiming that the beams were poorly stacked. I don't know what's true and what's not. It's been a strange year. Oh, I forgot to mention Billy Brandt's father, who was knifed fatally when he grappled with a masked intruder in his home. One day we had a discussion in class. They asked me,
Where did they go? The trees, the salamander, the tropical fish, Edgar, the papas and mamas, Matthew and Tony. Where did they go?
And I said, I don't know. I don't know. And they said,
Well, who knows?
and I said, nobody knows. And they said,
Is death that which gives meaning to life?
and I said, no, life is that which gives meaning to life. Then they said,
But isn't death considered as a fundamental datum, the means by which the taken for granted mundanity of the everyday may be transcended in the direction of...
I said, yes, maybe. They said,
We don't like it.
I said, that's sound. They said,
It's a bloody shame.
I said it is. They said,
Will you make love now with Helen, our teaching assistant, so that we can see how it's done? We know you like Helen.
I do like Helen, but I said that I would not.
We've heard so much about it,
They said,
but we've never seen it.
I said I would be fired and that it was never, or almost never, done as a demonstration. Helen looked out the window. They said,
Please, please make love with Helen. We require an assertion of value. We're frightened.
I said they shouldn't be frightened, although I am often frightened, and that there was value everywhere. Helen came and embraced me. I kissed her a few times on the brow. We held each other. The children were excited. And then there was a knock on the door. I opened the door, and the new gerbil walked in. The children cheered wildly.
This has been a reading of The School by Donald Bart Simpson. Hello, everybody. This is Anime Sickos, the podcast for geniuses, and the only podcast where we take a look at the four pillars of modern misery: anime, gaming, posting, and jobs. I am Tom, an anime sicko.
I am Joe, an anime sicko. Tom is back on the reading train. He understands that having fun isn't hard when you have your library card, and he has dragged me back into the light a little bit. So,
what a story! So, what is his last name really?
Barthelme. It's Bart Simpson. Yeah, Donald Bart Simpson.
When the fucking Korean orphan comes in, it's just like, no!
Yeah.
God, I was so hard not to laugh on the fucking track.
It's just like, hey, this is going to escalate in the way you think it's going to. But, like, nonetheless, there's a little bit of prestige with it. You're still wowed by it because it's just fun. Also, I cannot stress enough, that shit is like 4 pages. Like, short fiction doesn't have to be like short, but there is no fat in that.
It's beautiful. See, here's what I don't think I would have been smart enough to do. Is the, like, oh shit, I almost forgot, Billy Brandt's father was knifed to death by an intruder.
And that one is like so clearly out of order because like that's supposed to be a little later when it's heavier. And he's like, oh fuck, the fatal knifing, shit, yeah, that happened.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, I've been on the reading train. So here's the thing about reading a book, is that it's so good. Okay, so this happens forever. There are waves of this. If you've been on Blue Sky or fucking Twitter, if you follow the McHenrys or McHenry adjacent people, you know that people are... I think Defector is doing this now. Like, Defector just started their series.
Of actually reading classics or books?
Not just classics, specifically Moby Dick. I am a genius, and I read Moby Dick before all of this, all these recent waves. However, that doesn't... It's still a very old book.
Yeah.
Evan Dom, our homie and previous guesto, did a illustrated edition of Moby Dick years ago. So he's really the smartest guy in the universe. So here's the thing about Moby Dick is that, like, I think it's pretty close to the best book ever written. And if the Industrial Revolution never happened, which would have made the world better in so many ways.
More people would have had scurvy probably in total.
Yeah.
Because of our life of the sail forever.
Win some, lose some. But if the Industrial Revolution had ever happened, which, as far as Melville could have predicted at that point, probably wouldn't ever happen. If the Industrial Revolution never happened, then this truly would be like the best book ever. Brooks, no discussion.
Yeah, because all your inputs for everything industrial come from these scary and unknowable huge creatures with eyes that show intelligence.
That yes, but what I'm specifically talking about is like when I say Industrial Revolution, it's like, what does that mean for whales? I'll get into all this. Is like, well, if you need to kill a whale, you get in your big metal boat that you got from the metal that you manufactured. And the whale can't sink the metal boat. And then you shoot a harpoon that has an explosive on it that kills the whale instantly.
But if you're rocking wooden boats, it's like a quick time event every time.
So if I were to give the quick summary of what Moby Dick is, because everyone knows the plot, which is the Pequod with Captain Ahab wants to kill the white whale Moby Dick, and then Moby Dick sinks the Pequod and they don't kill him.
Yeah, Moby Dick is a little... fanatical in his goals.
He's got schmovement. He does a command grab to the Pequod, and there's just nothing left. It's one of those flawless victories. He didn't even take any damage. Anyway, the point is, that's not what it's about. Like, the fact that it's about that like these are the events that occur, that doesn't matter. What it's about is that at that time, before we had metal boats and like guns that shot the harpoons, it was like a guy in a little boat who was very wet
and stressed.
Who threw the harpoon.
Stressed, dude.
Oh my god. He threw the harpoon, and like that, and like the way that there was light was it was whale oil. So like there needs to be guys out there doing this. So what it's about is that this activity, which is insane and kills you, like it kills you. It has so many chances to kill you, and it's so hard, and it will kill a lot of the people you're with, who are people that you're seeing more than you're going to see any other type of person. You're going to be if you're a whaler, you're going to be on land so infrequently.
You're spooning
it's going to
strangers for like a year straight.
Yeah, and like the time you're on land, you may as well be on a fucking foreign planet. You're on an alien world, and you're just like, wow, this is weird. Anyway, back to the sea. So you're doing this activity that kills you. And the reason that you're doing it is to kill Cthulhu, basically. So a lot of people talk about H.P. Lovecraft's eldritch horror type of thing. It's like, it's a very interesting in concept, but his actual stories aren't so good because he wasn't a great writer and was also the most racist man of all time.
But also, like, his whole pitch is like, I can't describe how fucked this is. Anyway, end of story.
Yeah. And here's the thing. That concept that's so intriguing on paper, such that it's made H.P. Lovecraft like live on for all these years despite not being a great writer. Well, Moby Dick did it correctly, because I don't know if you know this, whales are real, dude. But especially at that time, when you would only see them for a little bit in a boat,
and you would have to kill them in that short window. That's the kicker.
And then like the only time you would see more than like a flash of them, more than like a little bit of them, they're already dead and they're like hoisted out of the water and like they're already misshapen. Like this is not what they truly are. Like these are truly unknowable beasts. Like you can't, like, how are you going to see one? It's in the fucking water. You can't see it. And critically, the sperm whales that they're hunting in the Pequod, these are like the whales that are fucking torqued up and jacked and can and will easily, just like, if they decide your boat is going to sink now, it will.
Their head is just a massive block.
Massive block, and they're like smart. That's the other thing. It's like these are essentially gods. These are like alien creatures. They are smart, they are stronger than you, and they are at home and you are not. Like, you are in a...
Yeah, you're on their turf.
On the sea, everything is going to kill you. There's a character, Pip, who falls off the boat at some point, and like they eventually pick him up, which is a real stroke of luck, because when that kind of thing happens to you, you have to assume the boat will not come and pick you up. Because, like, this is in the middle of a whale hunt, so we got the main ship, and we have the 3 little boats that are all going as fast as they can, you know, stuck to the whale.
They're busy.
There's a harpoon, and, like, if you fall off, well, the 3 boats are going, like, 50 miles per hour, and they're gone. So, like, how are they going to find your bobbing head in the infinite emptiness? Again, an alien world. You're basically, you're looking at, like, the realm where Cthulhu is, and it is so unfathomable to you that you go mad. Now, when you're making this entirely fantasy, saying, I can't describe this, just, you know, imagine you're going mad.
Man,
that's a little bit of a cop-out.
It's fucked.
But, like, the sea is fucking real. You've seen the sea, and because you've seen it, you sort of get it. Fuck. It's
So I wanted to just jump in and say, so I played the first Dishonored game. I haven't played the second one yet. The setting, I don't care too much. I'm indifferent. It's like a video game setting. The one thing that is absolutely the coolest choice about it is that even though this is clearly, like, post-industrial because there's, like, Tesla coils and shit, the game's, like, economy and like machinery all involve harvesting like fucked up whales. Like they're like monstrosities that are both intelligent and whatever. And it's just like a thing in the background that you read about, and it's just like, this is very cool. This is like much more compelling than like Blink teleporting behind a guy and saying nothing personnel kid and killing him. I like wanted to interact with the whales directly. Maybe you could have. I missed it, but I doubt it.
No. They're always in the background. I mean, it is just background stuff, but like they're right to think that this is very interesting. It all automatically makes the setting more interesting, and including the setting of the real world that people lived on. When in order to get the fuel that makes mundane life go, a group of insane men have to again risk almost certain death, go into an unfathomable part of the world so foreign to normal humanity that is extremely hostile to your existence, and again, fight gods that you can only perceive flashes of and who could easily kill you. This is not like a hunt where you're hunting deer, where the worst case scenario is I missed the deer. The worst case scenario is like a fucking monster from stories is here in real life, and now I drowned.
Yeah.
And what is so compelling about Moby Dick specifically is the narrator Ishmael, and a lot of people will try to play. When you hear people talk about Moby Dick, they'll say Melville says this. Melville is on one in this chapter. I categorically reject the reading that Ishmael is Herman Melville, that it is like that he's just speaking autobiographically, you know. It is because this is because as a writer, you know, I'm not as good as Herman Melville, I'll say it, but like this is sort of a thing of why I'm so pissed about that meme about like the curtains were fucking blue. Your English professor is going to say, oh, the blue represents the person's sadness. And the author is like, I wrote that the curtains were blue because they're fucking blue. Epic. I'm not saying that every single detail has like deep meaning that the author really meant, but if you've ever written anything that you tried on, and if you have any respect for writing, you have to understand that like it is not crazy to think that these things are done with intent. And when a book is as good as Moby Dick is, you truly cannot, you are doing yourself and the author a disservice by not realizing that this is done with intent. The entire thing about this book, so I mean, even though I've said like the plot, you know, what happens, who cares? The fucking Moby Dick sinks the ship. That's what happens. So that's the entire plot. And I've also said that it's about the strangeness and like alienness of this activity that people had to do. It's like almost silly. Like it sounds made up, but like it was real. But what the book is really about is Ishmael, our narrator, because he is the weirdest fucking twink who ever lived. And he's recounting this story of, my time on the Pequod years later. And the upshot of that is, one time I had the most unexplainable experience of my life. And I am used the remainder of it to try somehow to explain what this all means. And is he successful? Maybe. We don't know. Like, people talk about, like, they like to make this joke, Moby Dick. Isn't it like half whale facts? That's ridiculous. Whale facts chapters? But what they don't realize is that the whale facts chapters, while they do in fact contain whale facts, are not whale facts. They are Ishmael facts. Mm-hmm. You must understand that this is a fictional character who has been written to be this way.
This is what he's operating with in terms of...
He has decided, yes, to be like, what you need to know is every single thing that I know about all the different body parts of the whale. Like I said, this is an unknowable being. When it's actually alive and moving, it is always submerged. You can't really know what it is or does. And even though he, catalogs every body part, there's tons of parts of it where they're just like, we have no fucking clue what this is. Like, they just don't know. And these are the guys who know the most about whales of anyone. He's, roll it back a bit. The first 200 pages are a fucking bedroom farce full of huge, broad gags about Ishmael and his Polynesian husband, Queequeg, fucking around in New England, bilking innkeepers out of a second free bowl of chowder using little pranks. He's on this boat doing this thing. I need to read why I'm gonna fucking read you text about why he gets on the boat, because it's just gorgeous. I could read so many excerpts from fucking, this whole episode could be excerpts from Moby Dick. The real beginning of the book is that Ishmael, again, this is not, people say, I can't believe Melville did this. No, Ishmael did this. Ishmael starts the book by citing every single instance that a whale is mentioned in all of literature from the Bible to now. It's like 30 pages. It is so fucking funny. Anyway.
So he has autism?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. 1,000%. And this is like, again, I'll read why he gets on the boat. He gets on the boat with his fucking husband. They're in love. I don't think this is not a crazy reading. It's not like, oh, I'm reclaiming Moby Dick with a queer reading. Like, no,
they're gaying it up like they are.
They are. It's like
when
not
there's
weird.
Two skeletons discovered like embracing, and then they're like, I got two. These ladies were friends.
Yeah, in that you must understand that in their culture, sometimes you hug your friends.
You're 69 and die.
So he goes on this ship with his buddy. He had to go on the ship because this is the only way he gets anything out of his life, which I'll read in a second. He bonds with these people. He meets Captain Ahab, this strange, compelling figure who has this sort of otherworldly aura about him, who seems to be on like a mission of destiny. And as he's on it, he's trying to figure out like what are these things that we're going up against? Like, what does it mean to be a human being? To be a small little fucking monkey who understands what infinity and eternity is on a little boat, always seconds away from death, fighting against these beasts that are stronger than us, may be smarter than us. How would we ever know? How would we ever learn? What are they doing? What is their purpose? We'll never know. And they can kill us anytime. And then, spoiler, he's the sole survivor of the fucking Pequod. Literally everyone dies except for him. So this book, his retelling of my time on the Pequod, the whale facts are just him trying to be like, maybe if I'm autistic enough, maybe if I fucking learn everything there is to know about whales, I'll finally understand my trauma. I'll finally figure out what happened to me and what happened to everyone. What did it mean? What was it all for? That's what the fucking book is about. That's why there's whale facts. Here's the first paragraph. You will recognize the first sentence. Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse and nothing particular to interest me on shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world. It is a way I have of driving off the spleen and regulating the circulation. Whenever I find myself growing grim about the mouth, whenever it is a damp, drizzly November in my soul, that is a killer line. A November in my soul. Jesus Christ. How do you not love this book? Whenever I find myself involuntarily pausing before coffin warehouses and bringing up the rear of every funeral I meet, and especially whenever my hypos get such an upper hand of me that it requires a strong moral principle to prevent me from deliberately stepping into the street and methodically knocking people's hats off, then I account it high time to get to sea as soon as I can. This is my substitute for pistol and ball. With a philosophical flourish, Cato throws himself upon his sword. I quietly take to the ship. There is nothing surprising in this. If they but knew it, almost all men, in their degree, sometime or the other, cherish very nearly the same feelings towards the ocean as me. He wants to... this is what he does instead of taking the pills that you take, Joe.
Yeah, he needs them. But because of the time, he was probably instructed to drink whale oil.
Yeah, he goes on the fucking boat. There's a great... And, okay. Here's the thing about Moby Dick that everyone fucking says. They say, I can't believe how fun and funny it is. I never would have expected it would be this fun and funny.
Why isn't it homework, someone is saying. I was told it was homework. I was told that this dense whale book was a chore for people who love doing chores.
Like, what I'm about to say is going to sound like I'm being, like, smug, but, like, I was one of them, too. I was surprised also. I did not expect it to be this fun and funny. The question that I have for both me and everyone who says this is, why the fuck didn't we expect that? Who put this homework? Who made me think this was fucking homework? It's not. Let me read you a very funny line. This is just after the first time Ishmael has been on one of the boats that tries to harpoon and lance the whale. So, like, he gets off the ship and on, like, a little-ass rowboat that is stuck to the whale with a harpoon, and then there's a fucking big rope that goes from the harpoon to the boat that's dragging the boat at incredible speeds, and you have to not fucking fall off and die. And his captain, like the first mate who's in charge of his little ship, is Starbuck. That's where the coffee gets the name from. Whose main thing is, like, he is the one who is sensible, who is careful, who doesn't take unnecessary risks, and is very Christian and moral and upstanding. He's not goofy like the rest of the people on this ship. He knows he's just doing it by the book. And they, like, run after the whale into the fog, losing sight of everyone, and, like, a bunch of nonsense goes wrong, and it seems as though incredible amounts of risks are taken. And Ishmael falls off and nearly dies, but he is rescued, and as he's dripping on the boat, he's like, did you not tell me that Starbuck was the sensible one? They're like, oh yeah, he's so sensible. He's like, a lot of harpooners would call him a coward. And this is the line: there are certain queer times and occasions in this strange mixed affair we call life when a man takes this whole universe for a vast practical joke, though the wit thereof he but dimly discerns and more than suspects that the joke is at nobody's expense but his own. He's just like, this is a longer way to say, are you joking me? Fuck. And, okay, I gotta also read. This is the last fucking text I'm gonna read, but this is one of the best passages of any goddamn book. So a lot throughout, we have the whale facts chapters where he discusses different sort of tasks that you do when you are in the business of whaling. And one of them is you get the sperm out of the sperm whale's head.
That makes you live forever. I saw a movie about it.
Yeah. And it is it's called sperm because it looks like fucking cum. That's the reason. You get a bunch of cum out of the whale's head, and in the process of treating it so that it can be stored and saved until you can sell it on land, you have to do this stuff to it. And what you have to prevent is it clumping up, because it'll make little clumps, but you don't want it to be clumpy. So one of the jobs that you have to do is just a bunch of guys have to stand around and dip their hands in the cum, find clumps, and if you find a clump, you squeeze it and you break it up. Quote: squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. All the morning long, I squeezed that sperm till I myself almost melted into it. I squeezed that sperm till a strange sort of insanity came over me, and I found myself unwittingly squeezing my co-laborers' hands in it, mistaking their hands for the gentle globules. Such an abounding, affectionate, friendly, loving feeling did this avocation beget, that at last I was continually squeezing their hands, and looking up into their eyes sentimentally, as much as to say, "Oh, my dear fellow beings, why should we longer cherish any social acerbities, or know the slightest ill humor or envy? Come, let us squeeze hands all around. Nay, let us all squeeze ourselves into each other. Let us squeeze ourselves universally into the very milk and sperm of kindness. Would that I could keep squeezing that sperm forever!" For now, since by many prolonged repeated experiences I have perceived that in all cases man must eventually lower, or at least shift, his conceit of attainable felicity, not placing it anywhere in the intellect or the fancy, but in the wife, the heart, the bed, the table, the saddle, the fireside, the country. Now that I have perceived all this, I am ready to squeeze case eternally. Case is another word for this stuff. In thoughts of the visions of the night, I saw long rows of angels in paradise, each with his hands in a jar of spermaceti. Dude, hands in jars. Hands stuck in jars. I look at heaven and I see they're all got their hands stuck in
that
two jars.
passage is we're out here grabbing the slime, feeling feelings. Like...
There's another... I'm not going to fucking look this up because I've read too much. There's a great line where he talks about, one of the tasks is you're on top of the masts looking for whales. So there's always like 3 guys on the top looking everywhere trying to see a whale. And he talks about like, you really got to make sure you don't fall asleep because you'll fucking die if you fall asleep. And near the end, and he's going on and on. I mean, he talks like this the entire time. Like, it's gorgeous, this prose that he's writing. That's another thing to know about Ishmael's. Like, this is a genius. Like, this is what, like, his writing is beautiful. And that's another thing that I think you need to take into account. It's not fucking Herman Melville, it's the character. It means something that the character is like this. And it's even fucking commented upon because he says at the end of this chapter about being on the masthead, that like when he's up there, he has such thoughts and he's constantly thinking about like the poetic nature of what's happening and what does this all mean? And like, what is this vast beauty that I'm looking at? And as he's saying that, he's like, another thing to note is that my comrades always make fun of me that we never fucking see a whale when I'm up there. And the reason is because I'm fucking thinking about all this shit. If any whaling captains are reading this, please don't hire guys like me. We're philosophers. We don't do a good job.
You put me up there, I just start thinking.
It's so fucking funny. I love this fucking book. I mean, I'm not even going to get into Ahab. And Ahab is rarely in it for like the first 2/3. He doesn't even show up until like 200-ish pages in. Like they leave port and are like on the voyage for a while before Ahab comes out of his cabin to like speak. And this is like the signature character, Captain Ahab. He's iconic and fucking yes. I mean, like correctly. He has like one chapter where he explains like what this all fucking is. And then he's gone for a long time, and then he shows up at the end. But like, Jesus Christ, I've totally lost the shape of what I'm discussing. I'm just going to talk about this part. Why Ahab is so compelling. Why does he want to kill the white whale so much? So he doesn't actually want, this is another fucking thing about like why Ishmael is obsessed with this all of his life. Because like, what does it all mean? This is more than just a whale.
The whale killed Ahab's master, right?
No, Moby Dick bit his leg off.
Oh.
But that is not why. See, this is why like this book is fucking 600 pages long and has all these digressions. But I think it is as free of fat as the school is. This is just how many words it takes to fucking say all this. He both hates Moby Dick, the animal, but it's also not that. Because I'm going to fucking read it. I know I said I wasn't going to read another one, but God damn it, I gotta. He tasks me. He heaps me. I see in him, Moby Dick, outrageous strength, with an inscrutable malice sinewing it. That inscrutable thing is chiefly what I hate. And be the white whale agent or be the white whale principal, I will wreak that hate upon him. Talk not to me of blasphemy, man. I'd strike the sun if it insulted me. So what Moby Dick is to him is just like, you know how the world sucks? You know how constantly, again, we're just little apes who learned about infinity. Uh-oh.
What if we righted the cosmic scale by killing,
yes,
again, a sea god?
Is Moby Dick a god who symbolizes and is the agent on Earth of the malign, hateful intelligence that causes people to get depressed and sad? Probably not. But maybe he is. And if he's not, I don't fucking care. I gotta do something. That's what this all is. It's like, Moby, it's so much. Because don't you ever feel that way? Don't you feel, haven't we talked about this on Anime Sickos endlessly? That there are just this miasma of hatred in the world, this deep evil, a machine that you may well say will get blood. Don't you feel like it would be so satisfying to just be able to take action against it? Don't you think it would make you feel good if you could kill it back?
Wouldn't it be great if your problems were spearable?
It would be great. But they aren't spearable. Moby Dick fucking killed them all easily. And so Ishmael is left knowing, and like Ishmael talks about, like, Captain Ahab's insane, but I'm on like a boat with him. I'm sort of like into it. Like, I believe it.
I mean, even if he isn't, and he is, like, never been on a sailing vessel, but if the guy in charge is insane, you're stuck, dude. Like, why are you going to be, like, starting shit now? You already left.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of Starbuck's big concerns, is that, like, at one point he considers, like, maybe I fucking kill the captain. But he doesn't do it, much to his regret later when he and everyone is fucking killed by Moby Dick. Anyway, the thing is, so, okay, Ishmael, like, gets wrapped up in it, you know, for reasons, like, you don't have a choice, but also, like, Ahab is very compelling. He speaks in a very unusual way, and, like, he has a power to him that is, like, a magnetic. It just is. That's why he's such an enduring character, despite being in this book for a pretty low percentage of the pages. So, like, Ishmael, too, was feeling this feeling. And again, it all came to nothing. It was a ridiculous folly. Does this mean that humans are powerless motes of dust against a hateful universe? Or, that's the other thing. All this metaphorical shit gets talked about. But there are also chapters that have no purpose other than for Ishmael to be like, we've been really poetic lately, but I gotta fucking emphasize that Moby Dick is just a fucking animal. Like, Moby Dick's not magic. Like, this is a fucking whale.
It's not a Nen beast.
This is not a Nen beast. But it's both. It's what's so fucking, like, that's why it's so interesting. It's so good. And there's also jokes about sperm. And at one point, they cut the whale's dick off and they make a coat out of it. And it's a very funny chapter when they do that.
Wait, they get Moby Dick's dick?
No, another whale.
I
mean, throughout, because, you know, they're always searching for Moby Dick, but when you see a sperm whale on the way, you do have to kill it, because that is a lot of money.
Yeah, I was just kind of hoping, like, they all die, but also cut off his dick.
No, they don't cut his dick off.
That'd be a good last stand.
There's one bit where Ishmael just goes off about how modern scientists and scientific illustrators are so bad at knowing about whales. These eggheads back at HQ think they know about whales. If you want to know about whales, you ask the salty dogs on the boat, dumbass. And you like, look at this picture of a whale. It's so wrong. This is the wrong size. And there's one part where he's like, some of these eggheads like to say that whales are mammals because they make milk and breathe with lungs instead of gills. I guess that's accurate, but these fuckers are in the water, idiot. I'm going to call them fish. If you go to Nantucket, you go to the Chowder House, and you say, hey, what's that thing you spear? Everyone there is going to say, a big fish called whale. I'm going to trust them, not you, egghead. And I'm just like, yeah, whale is a fish.
Yeah. And then the whale shark, now you're cooking.
Whale shark. Oh, it's so fucking good. I could go on and on about this book, and I already have. All of which is to say, the point is, why did this got to be homework? why is everyone's assumption about Moby Dick is like, yeah, as you said, like this is a chore book for homework? Where did this come from?
People's first takeaway for Moby, like they know nothing else about it. It sits in their mind as, oh, that's that old big book. I'm not kidding. It is not more complicated than that for like the initial perception. In general, it's a classic, which we are told and sort of like, not told, but like we pick up on the fact. Like, how do I put this? How I was taught to read classics was very much, this is homework, like it. And like, that could really beat it out of you. I was a big reader as a kid until about like, I think 7th or 8th grade. And I think one of the major changes, at least I was going with my like literature or reading education, was like, it was big on like independent reading. Like you had to read a certain amount of books during, a year or a quarter or whatever. So that's like much more like self-driven. And you go from that to like, all right, I'm going to tell you what happens in Of Mice and Men. And it just like really makes you not care. Because you don't have any input on what you're reading, speaking personally, I associated that with like anything I would get assigned at school, and it wasn't correct, obviously, but that's just how it is. And when I tutored junior high and high school students that were kind of like close to where you grew up, and like it was a similar thing again and again, which is like my son like read all the time until like 7th grade. 8th grade, and then they just like didn't care, and like part of it is just like, okay, but like it might be like noticing things that they didn't notice before, so there's that element. But in general, I just think like if you really like reading, and then you have to sit down and read in a very specific way as set by like, this is how you read an important story. If you don't gel with that, you're just gonna like detach.
Is there a way to fucking teach, like, to assign text in school? Because I wouldn't think that, like, the right move is like, well, let's just not have anyone read fiction in school. Like, well, that's also wrong.
That's also wrong, and why there's always, this, there's some version of the discourse. It doesn't really happen anymore because Twitter is, like, so shitty. But for a while, there was, like, every month, there was the discussion of, like, children should be reading young adult fiction in schools, like exclusively. Like, what are these other books going to tell them? And it's just like, this is such a stupid framing.
I feel like it's so frustrating because like I feel pissed off that it took me this long to read Moby Dick. I would have loved Moby Dick when I was 15, as much as I love it. I would have read it multiple times by now if I had that head start. Jesus Christ, it's so goddamn good. I was about to mention another part, but it totally slipped my mind just now.
I will say there was a classic I read in college that I was like, okay, I'm going to dive into this because I know it's a classic, it's good. And my takeaway was it's fine. And that was Catch-22. And the reason I felt it was just fine is that I'm sure you're like kind of aware of the book in general, which is just that
I read it in college.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So like it's stupid. Like it's like pointlessly doing war with stupid names and stuff. So here's my issue. Is it just wasn't dumb enough. Like it just wasn't. Like
yes.
There has been goof inflation since it has been written, and I have higher standards now. The other thing about it that it didn't irk me, but it's something I couldn't shake, is yes, I'm not saying it wasn't funny, but there are times when things are funny, and you can tell the person also thinks they are clever, and I got that feeling the whole time, and for some reason, that aggravates me.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
Yes.
Like, if you did the George Saunders approach to like fucking Catch-22, it would be like, my commute to war this morning sucks ass. My bus got shelled one stop before my own. I rolled into a big pit, and then the enemy general did an announcement that said, anybody who kills me gets a bunch of coins. Like, that's the George Saunders approach. It does not sound like, aren't I being clever? It's like, no, I've weaponized, like I've solved for it.
It's a little bit of self-consciousness. I kind of feel like it is a flavor of defensiveness.
Yes. Yeah, you're like not putting your joke out there all the way.
Yeah, you feel like you have to put a layer of like good joke, huh? So that like it's okay that I put a joke here because it's a good joke, right?
Yeah.
Right? You can't do that. This does not fucking happen in Moby Dick. When it's silly, it just is. Like that part about like eggheads back at HQ call this fucking thing a mammal.
That's like a line out of time.
You seen it swim?
That is a line out of time.
Yes,
a time traveler gave him that one.
It's so good. It's so good. There's also a part where they're talking about the three mates they always have dinner with Captain Ahab because they're the three most senior officers on the ship. And the third mate, Flask, is like a little manlet who is kind of like stupid and cowardly. He's very much the least of them, both as a person and like in terms of character. And there's a fucking incredible line where it talks about how, since he is the lowest ranked of the three mates, he always gets his food last at the captain's table. So even though he's at the captain's table, which gets the best food, he gets a worse dinner than the common people because he gets the scraps.
Because he's a dog, basically.
And he never gets any butter. And in the middle of a sentence, there is a fucking little insert. It is surrounded by M dashes that said, "Flask, alas, was a butterless man." And I'm just like, "Flask, alas, was a butterless man" is like one of the fucking phrases of all time. I think there's few books. Actually, there's one book more that I'm going to talk about in a second. Few books that are worse served by being known as a classic by a dead white man than Moby Dick, because like you say, like it smacks of homework. It's big old book from school. It is a book that you have to do homework about, because if you're reading a book for school, you have to do homework about it, and the homework sucks. I don't want to do it. Homework's boring, so the book is boring, and all boring books are classics, and so all classics are homework. Yeah, we all know this. Fucking, like, no. This is just a guy. Like, you have to understand, like, he's an old white man, yes, but, like, Herman Melville a freak for real. Like, he's crazy. This is like a weird man who just went nutty. Like, that's what this book is. No one talks about how he went nutty, okay? Like, he did. It was nutty as hell. I love it. And so, the book that I just obliquely mentioned, that I also recently read, that is even more fucking underserved by being known as a big old classic. I read fucking Don Quixote. Moby Dick is funny, but it's like got its humor, like all good, like serious books. Like, I feel like if anything has to be like deep and meaningful, it needs to be funny all the time also, because to try to portray the universe and the world without humor is a false depiction, because shit's funny. It just is. So it's got funniness in it. Don Quixote is like just hilarious.
They puke in each other's mouth, right? Like they
puke
share
in each other's fucking mouths. Yeah. Yes. At one point, he's like, "Sancho, look in my mouth. Is my tooth broken?" And he pukes in his face. And so Sancho pukes back, and they get into like a puke resonance cascade. It's hilarious because Don Quixote is like, "I have a magical potion that can heal any wound. Let's drink it." And Sancho is like, "I can't wait to drink this potion. It's going to be so fucking dope."
Now you get to be really smart and like show that one panel from Chainsaw Man and be like, "This is a Don Quixote reference. When she pukes in him, it's actually
yes.
literary."
If you don't know this about Don Quixote, all it is, and this is not a stretch, I'm like replacing one word here. A guy read too much manga, and now he thinks Gokus are real. So he's gonna be a Goku. That's the story. Like, there's no other stuff. Replace manga and Gokus with chivalric romance novels.
He's hooked on knight
and
scrolls.
Knights. Yes. Like, it is exactly the same as, like, what if someone thought Naruto was a real guy and I want to be Naruto, so he got on a ninja suit and was Naruto running around the fucking, all around the way. That's it. Like, the entire, like, what is the plot of the book? It's this week on Don Quixote. It's just like, this week on Don Quixote, he gets into some fucking nonsense and guys throw rocks at him. And like at the beginning, you can tell that this is Cervantes is trying to sort of slam chivalric romances. He's like, these books are so goddamn stupid. They're so silly and unrealistic. This is the kind of thing that would happen if you actually tried to do that. But then something happens that I do not think he expected. And the way I put it to you was like, Joe, imagine if you were walking down the street in Little Shittily and you saw a man with spiky hair and an orange gi, and you went up to him. What is this guy doing? This MFer think he Goku. And because he think he Goku, he's always trying to get into fights. And because he's always, bringing, like, hey, can we do some violence? He's always getting into fights. And because he's an old man, he's like 70 and is not strong, he gets into the violence and instantly gets his ass plastered. And if you ask him, like, sir, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I totally could have had that, but he was just moving too fast for the eye to see. And would you not be like, oh, I love this man. He's like the most noble man I've ever met.
He's a fuck up that communicates flawlessly throughout time. Like, I mean, this person. Like, you should have seen the other guy after he gets his ass kicked is basically his line.
Yes. Oh my God, there's one bit, like, so his Don Quixote's knight name is the Knight of the Sorry Face that Sancho gives him because he has a really funny expression. He has like resting misery face, and he eventually gets a new title called the Knight of Lions. And the way that happens is this week on Don Quixote, they're walking around and they see somebody with a lion in a cage on a cart, and they're like, hey, what are you doing, buddy? He's like, I'm taking this to the fucking king to be in his big zoo. And he's like, let me fucking fight that lion. And he's like, no. He's like, no, you're definitely letting me fight that lion. And he like holds the sword up to this guy, like, you need to let me fight that lion or I kill you. And he's just like, yo, is everyone here agree that I'm not in trouble if I let the lion out? He threatened me. I'm not, don't hold me responsible. And everyone agrees and like writes it down. And so the guy opens the lion cage and like runs away and hides, and Don Quixote's standing there with his sword. The lion gets out, blinks sleepily once, yawns, gets back in the cage, and goes to sleep again. And Don Quixote's like, the motherfucker's afraid of me. I beat the lion. Everyone knows I beat the lion. It's just like, I'm the Knight of Lions now. It's like that. And another one is like every time something like doesn't happen exactly how he thinks it should, because it's like, I am the greatest knight, and I am magical, and I'm the great hero, so I'm always going to succeed. But when he doesn't succeed, which is always, he's like, what must have happened is a wizard enchanted me so that this thing looks different. It just looked like I got my ass kicked. Whoops. And at one point, so he decides like all knights have to have a lady love who they do all their adventures for. Like, this is for my great lady. So he invents a lady, Dulcinea, who is based on someone from like a town over from him that he knows about, but has never met or even seen. But everything's for Dulcinea, the most beautiful lady in the world. And Sancho, his fucking guy. And that's the other thing. Don Quixote and Sancho are that we owe so much to Don Quixote.
He figured out two guys standing next to each other.
It's incredible. Like, Joe, it's exactly 21 and 24.
It's you know what it is? It's like how, like, when merchants came up with double entry bookkeeping and it like changed the world. This is the literary equivalent of that, which is just like two dudes hanging out.
Two dudes talking. One of them's tall and thin. One of them's short and fat.
Both stupid.
They're both stupid in different ways. Oh my God. And okay, here's the thing so there's a couple things I got to talk about that are like astonishing how modern they are for being in a book from like legit over 400 years ago. One is there is a part where, and like this is a running theme, that even if it's not about knight errantry, they run into people who are delusional because they've read about things in books and thinks the books are real. So there is like a big funeral for this poet who is a poet shepherd, He decided to become a shepherd because it was very poetic, and he's killed himself because of a evil woman who spurned his love. How dare she? So cruel. She's this beautiful shepherdess, And everyone talks about this guy and his life, and they read some of his poems about how this cruel woman spurned him and he had no choice. And everyone's like, damn, this guy sounds dope as hell. Don Quixote is like, I love this guy. This guy's just up my alley. I love to go to his funeral. And while they're at their funeral, and everyone's like, this guy's the greatest poet. I can't believe that bitch. How dare she do it? The woman, the lady who he was in love with, comes up and is like, all right, you motherfuckers, you gotta stop. Am I beautiful? Yes, I am. I didn't fucking choose that. I didn't decide to wield it against you. I was so sick of motherfuckers trying to woo me that I became a shepherd so I could get fucking away from them. And what fucking business is it of mine if some guy decides, oh, I'm in love with you? I didn't tell you to be. I was so open about I'm not interested. I'm not the cruel one here. And hilariously, everyone's just like, she makes some good points. And they just sort of like leave the funeral and no one likes the poet guy anymore. It's so fucking good. And the other thing that I cannot believe, like, it's so fucking funny. This was in 1600. Don Quixote is not one big book. It's two medium-sized books. The second part of Don Quixote, which is the, pages 450 to 900, was written 15 years after part 1. They're not part 1 and part 2. It's Don Quixote 1 and Don Quixote 2. These are two books that just get printed together. And again, like, people were this fucking meta back then. In part 2, part 1 exists. And a lot of people, and like, it is as successful in the fictional world Don Quixote lives in as it was in real Spain. Like, everyone has read it.
This is so good. So this next part is proof that this is a true writer. Because between the publishing of the first one, you told me, and then the second Don Quixote, the two, some other jabroni just wrote a sequel and said it was like, it was his. And my understanding is he constantly takes time in the second chunk to address the other shittier version someone else wrote.
Yes. It's so funny. This
is posting mentality. Like, it 100% is posting mentality.
Cervantes would be the fucking best poster. He would be so goddamn funny, dude. Yeah, and in the introduction to the second part, he's like, you probably are expecting me to have something to say about that false volume of Don Quixote written by the Aragonese. Well, I won't say anything about it because that's beneath me. We know that this is the real one. So, that'll be that. Meanwhile, in the actual text, again, like every 50 pages, like they'll run into a character who was apparently from the fake version, and he's like, I know Don Quixote, and it's like, you do? It's like, oh, I sure do. It's like, that doesn't make sense because I'm Don Quixote. And he's like, well, now that I look at you, clearly you are. Oh, you're much more of Don Quixote than that other guy. And you must be Sancho. I can tell because of how funny you are. You're much funnier than the guy who I thought Sancho was. And Sancho's like, indeed, I am very funny. I say so many hilarious things. And he's like, and I can't. Who could deny it? In fact, get a notary over here. And a notary comes over and they're like, I'm going to make an affidavit right now that says that this really is Don Quixote and Sancho. And that there aren't any other ones. And there's another one where a character is trying to trick Don Quixote and Sancho into thinking some magic is real, and like I was near death and I had a vision of hell, but you saved me from hell with your heroism. And they're like, oh my god, what was hell like? Oh, hell was awful. There were these demons and they were like having a snowball fight, but instead of snowball, because it was hell and so there can't be no snow, they were throwing books at each other, and these books, when they would hit each other, exploded into little pieces of paper, poof, and they were destroyed. And there's a long, sucking, extended tangent where, like, and then one of the devils picked up the book of the false Don Quixote by the Aragonese. I'm like, this is really the worst book I've ever seen. The shit we're doing to these books is not, it's like too good for this book. You know what we ought to do is like get some demon fire and really burn it. And the other thing, so like a main part of this second part is there's this Duke and Duchess, these rich fucking people who love Don Quixote 1. And meet Don Quixote in real life and are like, oh my god, we gotta do fucking pranks on them. Prank videos for the rest of the book. And like, dude, there's like 300 pages. It's just like, and then they pulled another fucking prank on Don Quixote. Like, there's like, you know how I said that he kept saying everything is enchanted, so it looks different than what it truly is. At one point, Sancho had to show Don Quixote Dulcinea because he lied and said, "Oh, I gave Dulcinea your message," when he didn't, because he didn't want to do it because he's lazy. So he's like, "You got to take me to Dulcinea right now. Let's go. You know the way because you told me you've seen her already." So he just goes and he finds some random ladies. Like, that's her. And she's like really rude to him and is ugly. And instead of saying, well, that clearly wasn't her, he says, well, obviously a wizard made her be rude. A wizard made her be ugly.
A wizard made her hate my vibes, which are good.
Exactly. And he tells this to the Duke and Duchess, like, yeah, my lady got cursed to be rude by a wizard. I hate that shit. And so they put on a prank where someone dresses up as a wizard, and it's like the only way to disenchant Dulcinea is for your squire Sancho to fucking spank his big ass 3,000 times. And like they're all like, Sancho, you better get to it. Sancho's like, I do not wish to slap my big ass. Can it be light? And the wizard's like, no, it has to hurt so bad.
Eat the pennies, quiz boy.
It's Eat the Pennies. It's exactly Eat the Pennies, quiz boy. This is like, again, people think Don Quixote is like a difficult, serious text. Like, this is like history. This is like world history. And they're like, no, dude.
That's how it was in my head. Like, legit. Like, I knew it had like jokes, but I assumed it had jokes the same way Moby Dick has jokes, where it's like peppered throughout, not like, dude, these guys just puke.
Yeah, it is 100% gags. It is a fucking hilarious comedy book in the year 2024 that this guy wrote in 1600. Like, I gotta tell you, another move that is so fucking funny is that Cervantes is like, refers to himself as in the text, but he doesn't say he's the author. He is just translating the text that some Moorish author wrote into Spanish.
Dude, he's doing House of Leaves.
He's doing House of Leaves, and the gags that he gets out of this are at the beginning of part 2 when they meet the first time Don Quixote and Sancho learn that like there was a book written about them and it's a hit. Some like college student, university I think they called it at the time, is like, did you know there's a fucking book about you guys? And they're like, no, there isn't. There's no book about us. And they're like, no, there totally is. And he's like, I actually have a question for you, Sancho, because this is kind of confusing. There's one point where your donkey gets stolen, but it's not explained how. And he's like, oh, I can tell you how it got stolen. He explains, like, how his donkey got stolen. Because in the first part, he just wakes up one day and his donkey's gone. And the guy's like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is, like, how'd you get it back? Because you were, like, riding it again a couple of chapters later. And he's like, what do you mean, how'd I get it back? We got it back from the escaped convict. It was, was that not in the book? And he's like, oh, no, that was in the book. It's just that they said you were riding the donkey before that scene. And he's like, well, I don't know what to say about that. Must have been a bad translator. It must have been a bad author. It's just like, wow. And also in the first part, in the first part, there are a bunch of digressions that are like very long, where like the characters find a book in the world and like, let's read this book. And then there's basically a short story that is totally unrelated to anything that's going on. And there's near the end, they're at this inn, and the inn keeps on having people show up who are like, we are just had the craziest adventure, and they tell their story, and it's 50 pages, and like on and on and on. And in that same fucking scene where the guy's like, this continuity error didn't make a lot of sense, and Sancho's like, well, who fucking cares? Like, the guy says, like, yeah, also, as much as people loved your book, there were a lot of parts that had nothing to do with you. People really didn't like those. And, like, there are parts where, again, like, we stop the book so that Cervantes can be like, just so you know, I have, like, so many other stories that would be really good here. They're so funny. I'm like a genius with these. But I can't put them in because I'm sticking to Don Quixote because that's what you told me to do. It's too bad, really. You'll never read my great stories. Oh, well. It's like, it's The gags are off the chain. This is not funny for 1600. This is funny today.
In college, I've taken like history of the novel, and we didn't read Don Quixote, but like it entered into the conversation because the general consensus, at least when I was in college, is that the first sort of like appearance of what we consider the modern novel is Don Quixote. And I bring this up only because this was taught to me in several classes, and at no point did anyone bring up the puking.
I'm not kidding when I say I laughed out loud at the puking scene. This is still to this day, the famous Family Guy scene where they all puke.
It
it's
holds
just
up.
that.
Also, he's doing like meta stuff. In addition to like the House of Leaves translator stuff, he's like having people come in and like review what has happened essentially. And he's like, actually, and like, when was this published?
1600 for part 1 and 1615 for part 2.
And like the meta stuff is well done. It's not clunky.
No, I mean like it's
just fucking jokes.
It's just fucking gags, dude. Like there's no serious thing for the meta stuff to gum up and make convoluted. It's just like this week on Don Quixote, some guy thinks part 1 is a little clunky. Isn't that whoopsie? Well, it won't be like that in part 2.
I'm a sucker. Anytime a character has like a really outsized hatred for someone else in the book. In this case, the other guy who wrote the other Don Quixote in Jon Stewart's America the book. There's like a section where Rob Corddry writes like, when I'm president, I'll do the following things. And like every time he has that section, I will call for the immediate execution of this man at this address. And it's just like, yeah, you're hung up on it.
There's a great extended bit where Sancho Panza is Don Quixote's squire because Don Quixote tells him, I'm a knight errant. I'm the greatest knight of all time. If you read any of these books, you learn that knight errants constantly do adventures, and after their adventures, they get given huge amounts of treasure. They're generally made emperors. So I'm going to give you a huge gift. I'm going to give you $1 million, and I'm going to make you the governor of an island. And Sancho's like, dope, dude. I am so down to chill out with you for a month and then have an island. So he's constantly saying, like, man, where's my island? Like, we just get beat up by... Every day we meet 3 guys on horses, and they beat the shit out of us.
And somehow we haven't turned that into wealth. I don't know.
So the Duke and Duchess who are playing pranks on them tell him, like, oh, Sancho, I'm the guy who's giving you the island. Your master has earned through his heroism this reward. Here it is. You got it now. And so you have to have a blindfold on. So it's not an island. They just take him to the next town over. And because the Duke and Duchess are rich, they tell everyone in town, like, here's the gag, okay? So they put him in this house where it's the governor's house. And they have, like, the governor's doctor who's like, a governor must be in good health, so you can only eat a crust of bread and water every day. Sancho's a big fat guy who likes to eat the food, so he hates this. This is the gag. And then they have a series of people come in asking the governor for advice. And the situations they give him are all ridiculous situations that are meant to make him look like a fool. And Sancho is a fool. He is a dumbass, and he's constantly using mixed metaphors and just being hilarious. He's a very funny guy. And again, a gag as old as time. What if the idiot was right? Every single situation, he says exactly the right thing and fucking solves the problem perfectly. And there's a guy whose job it is to write down all of Sancho's dumbass buffoonery so the Duke and Duchess can laugh at it. And he's just like, shit, he keeps getting it fucking right.
This fucking oracle.
It's so goddamn good. I love it.
Let's do a nice little bookend. I want to talk briefly a little bit about some more Don Bart Simpson stories. I'm not going to read anything, but I will, will speak to some good short stories. Just a bit about him stylistically, like what to expect if you like that and you want a little bit more. So I would say with all of his short stories, what happens doesn't matter. Like, by which I mean, like, I will spoil a few good stories right now because it's not a spoiler, because the actual ride is the execution. Yes. George Saunders has a very nice essay about how good the school is, and in the metaphor he uses to describe the school, which is like a story, doesn't matter if it's a novel, short story, whatever. Any sort of narrative is like a little Hot Wheels car on a plastic track, and as the writer, you have to make sure you are building in things that make the car go, like stuff that amps the ups the ante. And that's very true. In the context of that essay, he just reiterates that the school is just like, here is the formula, and it's taken to an absurd length, and that makes it wonderful. There's two other stories that are there. He has many good ones, but if you give people 100 stories, it's too much homework, and we're against homework, right, Tom?
Mm-hmm. That's true.
One of the stories is, some of us have been threatening our friend Colby. And the entire story, it opens with like, yeah, we were our buddy Colby. He went too far, so we got to kill him now. And the whole story is just like them deciding like how we're going to properly execute Colby. And like, there's a part where Colby is like, I would like a band to be there. And they're like, you're just stalling. It's very, oh, dude, the fucking ending. The fucking
what happens?
Okay, so the stated thing that Colby did that causes them to have to kill him, it happens, they say it right at the beginning. They say he went too far. And
That's so good. That's
and then
so
at the
fucking
end,
good.
They kill Colby, and no one ever goes too far again. It's so fucking wonderful. The other one, Me and Miss Mandible, it's a grown-ass man who, due to a clerical error, is enrolled in like a 4th grade classroom, and it's like his like notes of just being like, oh man, all right. He's like telling about the latest drama in class, like which girl like thought he had a crush on him and then kicked his shins. It's just really good. It's just like prose that is like 100% committed to like the joke a lot of the times. There are parts where like this is a very smart, capital S smart story, and I don't disagree. Like, I don't mean like clever, but like it's both smart in its construction and execution, but it is fully committed to like the premise every time, and that's why he's so fun.
Yes, there's no wink.
Yeah, there's no fucking wink. Yeah.
I love the concept of like, due to like an Excel error, some insane thing is happening, and like there's no, like, don't even try to argue it. It's not happening. Like, this just is how it is now. Like, that's always
it's also very
funny.
Instructive. If you are like tearing your head out trying to figure out like, why should something happen to a character, or like why, it's like, don't just, the form was sent, it was wrong, okay? That's it.
I think that books and writing is like so good and fun, and I don't think that it's good that a lot of people just assume that books are like for thousands of years all authors have been writing workbooks.
That is the consensus. Yeah, like the bunch of people from the past wanted to make sure that kids have homework.
It seems silly, but like, even as I say it, I'm like I'm sort of surprised by it, which is just like, all of these books were written because the author thought it would be fun to write and hoped that you thought it would be fun to read. That's it, dude. Like, that is true. God damn, how do people get this? Like, is there a way to get to make this fucking like to get this into people's heads?
If
it's barely in my head.
The thing is, if it is, like, every written work, visual or textual, is going to be filled with AI Gregu. It's all... it's funny that we're having this right before the sludge descends on us.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. These old books are still going to be around. You can read old books your whole life and not finish them. I hear that they're going to do all the McHenry's friends. They're going to read Middlemarch, starting in the middle of March, by George Eliot. You ever read Middlemarch, Joe? Now, that's a funny book.
I actually might own it. I think it was one of those... I like when bookstores have like the note card underneath a book, and they're like, this person who works here, this is their take on it. And you know how many fucking books I've bought that I've never read just because they had the little card?
The little card is what puts a bookshop over the edge.
Because there's like, okay, I know there's a guy, I mean, there's a human being associated with like this take. And it's handwritten, which is cute.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes they put a little joke in there or something.
Yeah.
I love it. Middlemarch is like a one of those big ass, thick as hell British novels, where everyone gets married at the end.
Oh, like one big polycule?
No, they get married in pairs.
That probably makes more sense.
That would be really funny if there was like a Jane Austen.
That would be
type
very
book
un-British.
from like the 1800s. Yeah. If you read like a fucking book about people who have like manners and manors, both types, it's that kind of thing. However, Middlemarch is like exceptionally good. There's so many characters. Arguably the main character, Dorothea, is a young woman who's very intelligent, and she really values intelligence and erudition and elevation of mind. That to her is the main thing. I am not vain. I do not truck with these vain women who pursue foolish things like music and needlepoint. That is vain and foolish. I care for the serious intellectual arts, and that's what I want out of my life. And she meets a man named Mr. Casaubon, who is this old, gray, charismaless, like dullard, who is like, I am writing my life's work. It is a comprehensive history of all the mythologies of human culture. And she's just like, I can't not fuck him. And she's like, I'm going to marry Mr. Casaubon. Everyone in the world is like, Dorothea, do not fucking marry Mr. Casaubon. He's like 70. He's like not interested in her. He's like not horny. He's just like, I guess I'm getting married to this 19-year-old woman. That's okay. And she's like, I don't care what you say. I love Mr. Casaubon. I'm going to have the time of my life with him. This is who I was meant to be with. He is the light of intelligence. It's going to shine on me. It's going to give my life meaning to be near his intelligence. He truly is one of the men of all time. When his book comes out, he's going to be known as the smartest guy who ever was, and I'm going to be the wife of the smartest guy who ever was. I'm going to be thanked in his book, no doubt. This is clearly the move for me. I know what's right for me. You guys are all idiots. I'm getting married to Mr. Casaubon. She gets married to him, lives with him for a while, realizes, oh, this motherfucker's dumb. This motherfucker dumb. And like the shoe dropping part is that like he doesn't know German. Which at the time, if you're a scholar and you don't know German, if you're trying to do research and you don't know German, you're just like, oh, you're dumb. And she's just like, fuck, my life. It's so funny. And there's like a jillion other things happening at the same time. Oh, I love Middlemarch.
I can hear my kid. I gotta go tend to baby.
Indeed. So let's wrap up. All we got to say to you folks is that books are not homework. Kill the cop in your head who says that books are homework. They're not. They're for fun. They're fun. Read them. Also, another guy who fell off that we forgot, tin foil, tin cans. Those aren't made of tin no more. Tin fell off. Anyway, that's all for Anime Sickos. I've been Tom and Anime Sicko.
I've been Joe and Anime Sicko.
Bye-bye. See ya.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to Anime Sickos. I've been Tom, a sicko. You can follow me on Twitter at TomHarrison19. Joe is also a sicko. You can follow him on Twitter at ShariaUncle. You can follow Anime Sickos on Twitter at Anime Sickos, or email us at animesickos@gmail.com. Please leave us a review or something. I don't know. Tell a friend. Anyway, until next time, bye.